Hello, everyone. My name is Cash Miller. I'm the host of Marketing Masters, CEO of Titan Digital. Today, we're going to be talking about analytics. It's such an important area. There's so many opportunities that people can find if they take the time to see the stats, to actually analyze, and go through what it is that is making your website work, what's not. Everything in digital marketing it's about statistics nowadays. I say you got to be part data scientist to be really able to keep up with everything and find the most, opportunity to really take advantage of the things, because whether you're using Facebook, you're using, like I say, you've got your website analytics, you've got Google, you've got all sorts of numbers being thrown at you. And if you know how to use them, you can really, win in digital marketing. But if you don't, you're going to miss out on a lot of opportunities and such. Today, I've got with me Philippa Gamse, Websites That Win. Philippa, it's great to have you on. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Well, thanks, Cash. Yeah, it's great to be here. And I help businesses to find better opportunities for revenue and making money and getting the other kind of outcomes that they want from their websites, and also to stop wasting money on stuff that isn't working. So I work primarily with the analytics, but I'm basically a digital marketing strategist. So it's really not so much about just the numbers for the numbers' sake, but what can the numbers actually tell you that you can use to make more intelligent decisions about how you're running your business online?
Yeah. I want to start off our conversation by asking you, when you're dealing with clients, how often do they really understand how the numbers can help them? Because I see stuff with clients all the time where they really are not that knowledgeable about, the opportunities that are there because they don't take the time to really look at it.
Right. And that's the thing. You can be overwhelmed. I mean, Google Analytics has at least, I don't know what the number is now. It used to be like 140. I think it's probably more now, default reports. And there's just number after number after number. So it is easy to get totally lost in the weeds. My favorite kind of client is the business owner or manager who comes to me and they says, Philippa, tell me what I need to know to run my business better. Because that's the real point. It's not just all of the numbers. It's which numbers do I need to know to run my business better? And for different businesses, that will be different aspects of what you can see or depending on what you're focused on right now, whether you've got a brand new marketing campaign, brand new product or whatever as well. But having an approach so that you can get intelligent about it really helps.
One of the things I like to do when I'm, talking with other, people in the digital marketing space, I like to ask them what their approach with clients, especially from an education standpoint. So if I was a client, or a prospective client that came, to you, I said, hey, I kind of asked what you just mentioned, right? What would you tell me? How do you get that process going for them so that they're really thinking in the right direction? Because it's like, hey, okay, great, I'm coming to you, but clients need to know, and business owners need to understand this. So how do you kind of get them on the track for education?
Yeah, so, I think, first of all, it's really important to say it's a partnership. Because the business, I'm never going to know as much as the business owner does about their business, right? Mm-hmm. And so we put our heads together, and that makes us, we're better than the sum of our parts. But, the first thing you actually do have to do, which I know is kind of the boring end of it, but you have to make sure that the data going into the analytics is clean. So the first thing that I will do is audit the setup. Google Analytics, the new version, actually also has some default settings that are a bit silly, like it only keeps data for 2 months unless you reset that. I know you look stunned.
Yeah, I haven't been digging in heavily because we've got members of our team that they do that, but I didn't realize that really you have to tell it not to keep to keep data longer than 2 months.
Well, and there may be some occasions or some types of businesses for which that's actually especially since Google Analytics is much more oriented towards privacy now. But and things like engagement. So one of the things it has is much more robust ways of measuring actual user engagement and how they consume content and what they spend time on. But its measures of engagement start at 10 seconds. And again, I tend to change that because I don't believe if somebody's been on your website for 10 seconds that's what I would call an engaged visit, somebody who's really already interested, because they could just be still trying to find the right navigation button, right? So, and then again, I mean, I'm talking Google, but you can do this with most analytics programs. The power of it is in the actual setup that's customized to your business. And especially now, it has a lot of different ways that you can customize to tell some really sort of pretty deep, granular stuff. How far down a page people go, literally how much of a video they consume, which can be very helpful information. When they press certain buttons, or very, very specific things about what their behaviors are. And again, how you set that up is going to depend on your individual situation, the outcomes that you're looking for. And so one of the other things that we do very early on is to make sure that your own analytics implementation is set up optimally to measure the things that you really care about, which it may not be out of the box. And then having done that, we can get to the fun stuff, which is, what do we really need to know? What is it that we're working on? What are the key metrics for our business, right? And businesses are different. So e-commerce businesses are trying to seriously sell stuff online. B2B businesses are trying to generate leads. So, there are some differences, but also there are lots of little steps along the way. We call them micro goals, right, as opposed to macro goals. Mm-hmm. So, somebody signing up for a newsletter of some kind, or somebody consuming a piece of content that moves them along the kind of interest level journey, those kinds of things you want to know about. So you want to map out, what is it I really want to know about my business that will help me to figure out where things are working and where they're not?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think, I say that you mentioned a couple of really interesting things there, because you end up with a lot of data, and like you mentioned 10 seconds, and what they're actually doing in 10 seconds, and with websites, 10 seconds can be kind of like an eternity in its own way. It seems, because we're used to load times and stuff. We got to get it to load faster. So because people lose interest really quick, but also it does take time to actually read, and nobody reads in 10 seconds, any significant amount of content anyway. So that kind of stuff is really going to matter. And then, really seeing the journey. I know with Analytics 4, they've incorporated some stuff that typically you were having to pay other third parties, platforms to be able to get that kind of data. I know, you mentioned the scrolling one, and I think that's I have always loved that particular one, because you can see how far people are going down. Because when I'm talking with clients, I'm constantly educating that, as you scroll down, you've got 100% of the people see above the fold. But right. By the time you get to the bottom, and I always find this really interesting, because you'll see all sorts of people put the lead generation forms at the bottom. And I'm like, only 10% of the people get down to the bottom. Why would you put your form at the bottom? You put it at the top. But it still happens constantly. Because it's like, hey, we want to introduce ourselves first. And if they get all the way to the bottom, but we have this habit of scanning everything that's online. My wife actually the other day was like, I was looking at an article, and she was looking over my shoulder, and I'm reading through the article, and she's like, there's no way you could be reading that fast. And I'm like, well, I'm not. I'm scanning, because that's what we do online.
Right, right.
And I was looking, and I was reading key, things parts of the article that I found of interest. But it's the stuff that they've included. Typically, we've had to go to third parties. Now, there's still things that they don't include, but they have made it a lot more, useful from that. Let me ask you, when we do reporting for clients, we don't give them Google Analytics reports. We use the system, but we always want to be able to visualize the data better and make sure we have key points that they can, that we're focused on for their type of business. So do you have any, I guess, suggestions or tips, on how you make things more interesting so that you can engage the client or that business owner better, so that, because like I say, otherwise I can send them reports. They can look through them. Doesn't mean they actually pay attention to them. They scan them out, like, how do you get, how do you make it so it's more visually appealing so that people actually want to take the time to read it? What's the business owner?
Right.
What's going to keep their attention?
So I think there's two things there. I mean, first of all, the analytics programs will link through to something like Google Looker Studio or BigQuery, which are which are the data visualization tools. So you can get the data into those tools and then, as you said, make it look a bit prettier. But, I think the key to that is, again, going back to not just delivering the client, the usual dashboard, but tailoring it to different clients. Maybe you've got, more than one team at the client. What is it that again, what do those people actually need to know? Because the marketing people want different things from the sales people, from the fulfillment people, and so on. Right. So one, thinking about the actual recipient of whatever report it is you're sending out. And then two, there's all sorts of studies on visualization, right? But using the kind of visual that really helps bring out what it is you're trying to convey. So I used to teach at a business school where I had a colleague who, if any student gave him a pie chart, they'd fail. Well, it wouldn't fail, but he was adamantly opposed to pie charts because he said that half the time they don't really visually convey good information. So what is the best venue? Is it a bar chart or is it a map? And then overlaying maybe some further information like trend arrows. Is this going up? Is this going down? Is this is this good? Is this bad? But the thing that I think makes a consultant like myself powerful is not just reporting the numbers, but then adding on, do we have suggestions or recommendations about things that we should do as a result of seeing this? Mm-hmm. Do we just want to look at a report and say, oh, good, there's more of this than there was last week, and walk away? Which goes back to, what are you looking at, and are you looking at the right things? But actually being able to apply the numbers to say, this isn't looking good based on what we're trying to do. So we need to do something about it, and then figuring out what that might be.
Well, I think it's partly you're taking and deciphering the data for them. So for a business owner, because even if you have an internal team of marketers, and I like your point about breaking up the content based on, or essentially designing different reports based on who is going to be the end audience. So, often if you're from a marketer's point of view, if you are, and this can include internal marketing teams and stuff, consider who is going to be reading the data. Who is the audience? Who do you want looking at it? So if you're an external agency, you're tailoring it for the business owner, but also potentially if they have a chief marketing officer, and that might be different than what the business owner sees. If they have any kind of internal marketing team that you're working with, because often, you end up working with companies that do, like, internally, they might do specific things, but not everything. So you're hired to do, it could be you're hired to do SEO, but they do all their paid marketing in-house or something like that. So tailoring the data for that specific audience, understanding that the business might have multiple people that are different audiences. And then you take, and from there, you want to be able to, build out pieces of the report that say, okay, here's the actionable things we could do, based on this data, not just throw numbers at them. So, because as a business owner, it's great to see the data, and maybe it's trending in the right direction or the wrong direction, but whether it is or not, you still want to know, what is it amongst there that you can use, what are the suggestions and stuff? Because often I think the strategy part is separated. Like, here's the data, but here's the strategy, and they're not really combined into one cohesive thing. Right.
And the other thing is giving the data context. Obviously, the very crude kind of measurement is, did we have more visitors than we did last week, right?
Right.
But
Yeah.
just having more visitors than you did last week isn't necessarily a good thing. If they're the wrong kind of visitor, it doesn't make any difference, right?
Right.
If you have 20,000 people coming to your website and none of them are the right type of person who actually buys your stuff, then that's not really helpful. So that's why I'm saying, interpreting the numbers, putting the numbers into context, and looking for what they might suggest.
Yeah. Now, the data itself, if when you're going through it, I mean, the idea of being able, the whole point of the data is to find opportunities. So, you want to be able to, from some standpoint, use it to, push innovation within a business, because it's looking at opportunities. So, for example, you have a certain type of visitor, because you mentioned that you could have 20,000 people show up to the website and they're not your customer. Now, maybe some of them are, but maybe the way you're speaking to them is wrong, so that they won't, in the current form, they're not. So
Right.
what kind of suggestions might you have as far as, when you are breaking some of that data down to find opportunities,
Right.
is there an approach to that?
Yeah, and especially if you have a lot of content on your site, for example, so you're talking about your products, your services, your expertise. One of the things that can be very helpful is to have an internal site search engine, so a search engine that's actually on your site.
Okay.
And then you can track what people put into that. So what they're looking for once they get to your website. And that can be incredibly valuable market research, because it tells you what your visitor's mindset is, and it tells you what they expect to find at your website. And I have absolutely identified with clients opportunities from that for new products, new services, based on, as I say, what the expectations are. And even simple things like understanding that the words that they use are not the words that you use. So one of the things we have, especially in more technical businesses, is, there's a load of geek speak, right? There's a load of jargon.
Yeah.
There's the terminology that we use, that we know. But one of the things that is often overlooked is that the visitor doesn't necessarily know your words. So finding out how the visitor speaks or thinks about what you're selling, and then again, if they don't understand your terminology, changing that or educating them accordingly can be very valuable. And the other thing is finding that you've got different types of visitor from what you imagined. And I've done this a few times as well. I worked a while ago with an industrial wax manufacturer up in Wisconsin.
Okay.
And so they made, big order B2B industrial waxes. But they had beeswax and duck wax and very high quality.
Duck wax.
Yeah. Their website
I didn't know there was such a thing as duck wax.
their website was all about how, the quality and all. And it became very clear from the analytics that we were seeing a lot of consumers who wanted to buy beeswax to make their own candles.
Okay.
But they weren't the target client or the target buyer of this client, right? But there were so many of them that we said, wait a minute. And the clients actually created a little side e-commerce site for consumers. So the website said, if you're a consumer and you just want a small order, click here. Took them off to this other site where they could buy enough, beeswax to make 10 candles. I mean, small orders, small fulfillment. Sure. But there was enough people coming to that side website to make it economically worth doing. And not just lose all that traffic just simply saying, hey, we don't serve you. So if you want to do stuff like that, it can be very helpful.
That's a really good example, because often you'll see, especially manufacturing type businesses, that they have it in their mind that we serve a particular customer. And years ago, I worked with a company that produced ball bearings. But the thing is they did small batch, very similar, small batch ball bearings. So like in the ball bearing world, you might buy, a large company like General Electric would buy from these types of businesses, but they might buy 100,000 or 200,000 or something. Well, this company did small batch orders, so it'd be like 2 or 3,000. For whatever product you're going to manufacture, and you need those in there. Well, a lot of the traffic they got were for people that needed ball bearings. Okay, but they wanted them for one-off uses. Now, I don't know that their business model would have allowed for them to serve that market, but just as your example, the potential exists that if you're getting enough traffic of some sort, you might have a business opportunity, chance to serve those people. And in your example, they set up a side e-commerce and said, if you're a consumer and you want a small batch, click over here. And if it's not that hard to run from a business standpoint, it could be a nice little opportunity that's also very low maintenance.
Right. Exactly.
So
yeah.
Yeah.
I've also done this, by the way, with knowledge products.
Oh yeah.
So I worked with a law company which was in employment law, and they didn't do litigation; they did training. So they trained big companies in how to run a fair workplace. But again, it was a similar kind of concept. We had a load of employees coming to the site because there was so much really good employment law content saying, I think I've just been unfairly terminated, or I think I'm being sexually harassed.
Sure.
And we created for that market, again, which wasn't the target client, but we created ebooks, which are basically PDF files that you pay some money and you get the file, right?
Yeah.
So it's completely self-fulfilling. So that people could come along and say, I think I've been unfairly terminated. Okay, here's a checklist. Before you go and see a very expensive lawyer, here's a checklist that you can just run through to see if you might have a case, with, of course, a load of disclaimers all over it. But, obviously they were lawyers.
Sure. Same
thing. This thing, once you set it up, it pretty much runs itself. And it sits there and quietly makes a few $1,000s a month. And, that's fine. It's good.
Yeah, well, electronic products are a great example because, once you've got them set up, it's a download. So there is no work. You literally just collect the money, and you set up a payment system with Stripe or something else, to just be there in charge. So it's click, add to cart. They make their purchase. They've got their, hey, download your ebook here and you're done. And so, besides some setup on the front end, after that, you don't have to do anything except collect the money. Like literally just watch it, and you don't even have to do that. It drops into your bank account automatically. You just need to do the accounting for it. So those are some really good examples of, like how you can use your analytics, see who your people, who are the visitors, really start to, drill down a bit, and you may find opportunities like that within the business that you already run, because of, that's the weird thing of website traffic. Often a website won't be necessarily attracting the people you think you would, that is your, normal target audience. You might get other people that are similar, and could use something that you might be able to offer.
But to go back to something you said earlier about, for example, let's go back to somebody's real business, what you actually are selling. But you mentioned scrolling, and a call to action form that's right at the bottom of the page. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've seen stuff like that. You're absolutely right. And there's no reason, by the way, why you shouldn't have your call to action in more than one place on the page. I mean, you can have it at the bottom for people who actually get to the bottom, but have it higher up as well. I mean, to me, the best place to put a call to action is when you look at your copy, you should be able to identify places where the visitor's going, hey, that's interesting, tell me more. And as soon as you've got them going, tell me more, you want something that they can interact with.
Yeah, that's the whole point of like having scrolling trackers and heat maps and stuff too, because you can see, heat maps can be very useful in that regard because you see what they're clicking on or attempting to click on in some cases, because you'll see, you can have websites that have places that look like they're buttons, they're saying something and they're not actual buttons. And that you might find that there's an opportunity that if you turned it into one, that's where people are, they want more information. It could be as simple as I'm saying this, very briefly in some box or whatever. And I've got a, button of whatever it might say. But if you turn it into a learn more, and then, they want deeper knowledge about that particular thing, and you're not offering it yet, they're trying to get it. So you can find opportunity there to say, hey, they do want some more information. Let me set this up so I can actually give it to them.
Right. Yeah. And honestly, the amount of content on websites that have a lot of content where the content's completely wasted is crazy. People make really good content, but they don't monitor how that content is being consumed. And so people don't find it, or it's too far down the page or whatever. And it's great stuff. And given that most businesses have websites where it's not like it's not Amazon, right? Somebody just doesn't come along and immediately buy something. So you're looking at a customer journey where you're trying to engage people and get them interested in what you have to say, what you're selling, what you're talking about. You want all of your content to be working for you as much as it can. And that's so often not the case. And again, all the things that you can do with analytics around engagement, what people like, what they don't like, where they're going, to see if you can move stuff around to get more leverage out of the content that you've got there.
Yeah. How do you set goals that can actually be achieved? Because if you're going to, people should be focused on their analytics. Business owners should take an active interest in what those numbers actually look like. I know we have a lot of clients. We send them reports every month, yet very few actually, and we offer to set up meetings, go through these reports, give you the breakdown and stuff, but very few will actually take us up on it. And I think it's, from a business owner standpoint, it's such a lost opportunity. They don't want to make the time, but then you have some that, they make the time. You got to be able to set achievable goals, achievable expectations, on the client side for the business owner. So how do you go about setting those clear and achievable goals if you're a marketer, but also the expectation of the business owner, of what is an achievable goal, because some of them have ridiculous ideas.
Right. Well, yeah, it's, first of all, I wouldn't just show up at a client and say, hey, would you like to see this lovely report? Because I think, again, going back to the point is, what do you need to know? What are you working on? Where are the things in your business that you feel aren't working? Or where would you like to expand? Or, what's going on? So that what we're doing is talking to what the business owner is actually trying to achieve. Because there's no business owner that's not going to say, hey, tell me more. If you say, look, I've got an idea of where you could make some more money, or I've got an idea of where you're pouring money into a black hole, do you think you should stop? Right? That's going to get their attention. So identifying, what is it again, what we're really trying to do. And I don't know, targets for goals are, I get a lot of people asking me about benchmarking, and I think benchmarking it's a bit difficult because when you compare your performance to other companies, there's lots you don't know. You don't know how good their marketing is. You don't know all sorts of internal things. So it can be to some extent useful if you want to know, what's the average something or other in this industry. But to some extent, I think it's trial and error. And if you look at conversion rates or outcome rates of what you're doing, for example, with your website, and nobody's doing anything, then obviously that's really bad, right?
Yeah.
So you start to grow from there. And I think you can get an idea of what's a sort of typical response rate. E-commerce response rates right now, or e-commerce completion rates, are still 2 to 3% on average. It's still amazingly low, right? So if your site's doing 5%, you're actually doing quite well, which I find, it's phenomenal. But I think you have to go to the context. You have to go to what's our sales cycle, how complicated is what we're selling. There's lots of different factors. I'm not sure there's a one size fits all rule here.
Got it. Yeah. Every business is going to be a bit, they're definitely going to have They're all different. Every business, you can have two businesses that technically are in the same industry, but they can have different, benchmarks too, based on, who they actually go for. And, and also the size of the company that they are, let me say one's large, both could be, in the HVAC business, but if one's larger than the other, then the goal set's going to be a bit different. The expectation, the number of markets, there's all sorts of different competing factors that you have to consider. So you want to be able to dive into that business. You can set expectations, but every business is going to can be very different on what those expectations will be.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, I'm going to end on that note and ask just like, what would be if you are a business owner that really, you haven't been paying much attention to the analytics? What advice would you give them if they've finally decided to, get into it and learn, what these numbers actually mean?
So there's lots of stuff online that can help you. I mean, honestly, I would recommend, not because this is what I do, but I would recommend, if you're really new to it, get some help from somebody who can really show you and explain to you, because it's not trivial. But there are so many opportunities to really improve the outcomes of what you're doing, to really figure out if you've got a website which is playing any kind of role in your business, and if you're not understanding how that website is performing for you, then you're just shooting in the dark with everything that you're putting into it.
Right.
And that's the bottom line. So you're running blind, and you may be running pay-per-click advertising or whatever, but again, you need to know whether the money that you're putting into it is paying off. And if not, where you need to make the changes. So Google Analytics is free. It's obviously consultants are not free, but if you've never given it a go, find somebody that can get you into it and start being intelligent about what you're doing online.
Yeah, and there are a lot of online tools that you can use to educate yourself, courses that can be taken. A lot of stuff is video based nowadays, so you don't necessarily have to spend a ton of time reading. You can really see examples and have see walkthroughs of. And you have to remember that in the case of any kind of analytics, there's going to be a lot of data there, but not all of it is going to apply to your business. So you can do customization and say, these are the numbers I care about the most. Once you've kind of dug in and seen what numbers exist, then you can start to decipher it. Yeah.
Right.
Well, this has been fun. How would people get a hold of you if they want a web analytics expert to work with?
Thank you. So my website is websites, plural, thatwin.com. And I'm sure you're going to put this in the show notes as well, right?
Yes, we do.
And most of the time I hang out a lot on LinkedIn. So you can also find me on LinkedIn. And I'd be happy to hear from everybody. And I do offer a sort of free introductory call. If you want to chat with me and just see if I can help you out, I'd be happy to do that.
Okay. My name's Cash Miller. I'm the host of Marketing Masters, CEO of Titan Digital. We've been talking about website analytics. If you are a business owner and you are not really actively engaged, like if you're using an agency or you have an in-house team, but you're not really paying attention to, the data, you need to start. As a business owner, you have a lot of responsibilities, but you're spending money on marketing one way or another. And you're going to see that there's a lot of opportunity and there's missed opportunities. And if you're not familiar with that data, then, like I say, as business owners, we got to be educated. So I highly recommend get the education, take it seriously. It doesn't take that long to actually go through it each month or each week, whatever the appropriate period of time is, for your business. So take it seriously. Thank you for tuning in. We'll see you on the next episode.